Okay, so get this. Today we're diving into something pretty unique, I think. We're going to be exploring a world where, get this, cats can talk. I know what you're thinking. Is this like some kind of joke? But trust me, this deep dive is going to be both fun and surprisingly insightful. We're looking at a video script that's designed to teach English using this scenario.
It might seem a little, out there, but using a playful concept like talking cats can be a really clever way to make learning a language more engaging.
Exactly. And that's what caught my eye. It's like they take this delightfully absurd idea and turn it into like a tool for learning. So the video script jumps right into the action. You wake up one morning and boom, your cat starts talking.
It really does.
And they even give you like some example sentences right off the bat. Like, if my cat could talk, the first thing it would say is, where's the food?
It's a great way to introduce that hypothetical situation, while also sneaking in some vocabulary and some basic sentence structure. You're learning without even realizing it.
Right. And it gets even more entertaining. They create a whole dialogue between like a person and their talking cat. There's this one line from the cat that I absolutely love. Why do you always wake up so late?
Okay, I have to admit, that's pretty funny. It plays on that common stereotype of, cats judging their owners.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to their sleep schedules.
Oh, totally.
That whole aloof and superior attitude.
I guess.
It's a classic example of anthropomorphism, giving human qualities to animals, which is a technique that's often used in storytelling and comedy to make us laugh or connect with characters.
Yeah.
But think about it, recognizing anthropomorphism in media, it can really help us understand how creators try to influence our emotions and even, our opinions.
That's such a good point. It makes you think about all those cute animal videos we see online and how they might be, playing on our emotions a little bit to get more views. But back to the video script. While we're chuckling at the, the talking cat's sass, we're also learning about things like the second conditional tense,
which is a grammatical structure that lets us explore those, hypothetical situations, those what-if scenarios. And it's perfect for imagining a world where cats can suddenly chat with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, the second conditional, it's formed using if plus the past simple tense, followed by would and the base form of the verb. For example, if my cat could talk, I would ask it so many questions.
Ooh, that's helpful. I always struggle with remembering how to use those conditional tenses correctly.
Yeah.
But you know what else I love about this video? It encourages viewers to actively participate. It asks questions like, if your cat could talk, what's the first thing it would say? Hey, I'm already imagining my cat demanding more cuddles and complaining about the brand of treats I buy.
That's the beauty of interactive learning, By asking those open-ended questions, the video turns passive viewing into an active experience. It encourages you to think critically, tap into your imagination, and even personalize the learning process.
And it really struck me, this whole idea of talking cats. It kind of goes beyond just learning English. It makes you think about the bigger picture of communication and what it would be like to truly understand our animal companions.
You're absolutely right. It raises all these fascinating questions about the human-animal bond and whether we could ever truly bridge that communication gap.
Totally.
Imagine the possibilities, if we could actually tap into their thoughts and their perspectives.
It's mind-blowing. And maybe a little bit scary, too.
Yeah.
What if our cats aren't as thrilled with us as we think they are?
Well, that's where speculative thinking comes in. The second conditional tense. It isn't just about grammar. It's a tool for exploring possibilities, challenging our assumptions, and maybe even, confronting some uncomfortable truths. And who knows? Maybe what we learn from those what-if scenarios can lead us to treat our animal companions with even more understanding and respect.
That's a really interesting point. This seemingly silly idea is making us think about some pretty profound concepts. And speaking of pushing the boundaries of imagination, this video has a grand finale. That really takes things to the next level.
Oh, you mean the part where they challenge viewers to write a short story using those what-if scenarios and the new vocabulary they've learned?
Exactly. It's like the ultimate test of creativity and language skills all rolled into one.
It's a brilliant way to reinforce what's been learned, while also encouraging viewers to use their imagination and, have fun with the language. This video script is a fantastic example of how a creative and engaging approach can make learning more effective and enjoyable.
I completely agree. It's like they snuck in a bunch of educational value under the disguise of a talking cat. But before we go any further, I'm curious to know what you think about this whole talking cat scenario. I mean, Have you ever imagined what it would be like if your own pet could suddenly speak to you?
I actually have, and it leads to some pretty interesting thoughts about what we might learn from them,
Yeah.
Would their view of the world be completely different from ours? Would they have like these complex thoughts and emotions that we never even imagined?
Yeah, it's a pretty mind-blowing concept, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we already know that animals are capable of some pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
But to actually be able to have a conversation with them, that would change everything.
It really would. Think about all those times you've looked into your pet's eyes and wondered, like, what are they thinking? And if they could talk, would it strengthen the bond you have with them? Or would it, complicate things in ways we can't even predict?
Honestly, I'm not sure if I'd be ready for that level of honesty from my cat. She might have a few choice words about my taste in furniture.
Oh, I can imagine.
But speaking of honesty, this whole talking cat scenario also makes me think about the ethics involved.
That's a really important point. If animals could talk, would it change our responsibility towards them? Would we still see them as companions? Or would their newfound ability to communicate, elevate them to a different status?
It's almost like a science fiction dilemma, right?
Yeah.
We're so used to being the, dominant species on this planet. But what if that changed? What if we had to, share the stage with other intelligent beings who could, vocalize their needs and desires just as clearly as we can?
It's a fascinating question, and it's one that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries. But I think it all kind of boils down to respect, If we can learn to listen to and understand other species, even if their way of communicating is different from ours, then perhaps we can create a more,
Harmonious and
equitable world for all living beings.
That's a beautiful thought. And I think one that this whole deep dive has been kind of hinting at all along, even though we're talking about a hypothetical scenario, it's prompting us to think about our relationship with animals in a new and potentially transformative way.
Exactly. And that's the power of speculative thinking. It allows us to explore possibilities, challenge our assumptions, and maybe even glimpse a future where communication and understanding transcend those boundaries of species.
I love that. And it's amazing how this whole conversation started with a simple video script designed to teach English. It just goes to show that even the most playful and seemingly absurd ideas can lead to some pretty profound insights.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners today. Don't be afraid to embrace those what-if questions. No matter how silly or far-fetched they may seem, you never know where they might lead you.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of what-if questions, I have one final thought to leave you with, something to ponder as you go about your day. What if, instead of just cats, all animals could talk? What would be the most surprising thing we might learn from them?
Wow. That's a really thought-provoking question. It makes you wonder, if their insights would challenge our understanding of the world, or maybe even reveal some hidden wisdom we never expected.
Imagine hearing a bird's perspective on migration, or a dolphin's take on ocean conservation. It could completely change our understanding of nature and our place in it.
Right. And it might not just be about, the grand mysteries of the universe. What if we learn something unexpected about the everyday lives of animals? Would their thoughts and desires turn out to be more similar to ours than we ever imagined?
It's fascinating to think about. Maybe dogs would confirm that they truly love us unconditionally. Or maybe squirrels would finally reveal the secrets of their incredible nut hiding skills.
Speaking of squirrels, their ability to remember the location of thousands of buried nuts is remarkable. Imagine if they could tell us how they do it. Maybe humans could learn a thing or two about, memory and spatial awareness from them.
That would be incredible. It really highlights the the potential for learning and understanding. If we could, tap into the minds of other species, it might even lead to breakthroughs in fields medicine or technology.
You're absolutely right. And beyond the scientific advancements, I think the most valuable lesson might be a deeper sense of empathy and connection with the natural world.
I completely agree. This deep dive started with a humorous video script about talking cats.
Yeah.
But it's really opened up a whole world of possibilities.
It's a reminder that curiosity and imagination are powerful tools for learning and growth. And sometimes the most profound insights come from exploring, seemingly lighthearted ideas.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, we encourage you to keep pondering those what-if questions. What would you ask your pet if it could talk? What secrets do you think the animal world holds? And most importantly, how would those answers change your perspective on life?
It's been a fascinating journey exploring this topic with you. We've covered, language learning, the human-animal bond, and the potential for, interspecies communication. It just goes to show that even a seemingly simple question can spark some truly deep and insightful conversations.
Thanks for joining us on this uniquely engaging deep dive. We hope you've learned something new today, and maybe even been inspired to look at the world around you with a renewed sense of wonder. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those what-if scenarios coming. Ever wished you could just fly to work, escape the traffic, enjoy the view?
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're diving into a world where that's actually possible,
Interesting.
at least in the minds of English language learners.
Okay.
You see, our source material is a video titled, "What If Humans Could Fly? Learn English with Fun and Imagination."
Uh-huh.
And it takes this wild idea and uses it to teach vocabulary and grammar.
It's a pretty clever concept.
Yeah.
Using something fantastical to make learning stick. I mean, we all remember those dry textbook lessons, right? This video tries a different approach.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Right.
The video starts with this simple question. What if humans could fly?
Right.
And then throws out example sentences like, if I could fly, I would explore the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already picturing myself soaring over the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
But, this gets to something interesting, this idea that learning is more effective when it's, fun. Is there any truth to that?
It definitely makes sense intuitively. Our brains are wired to remember things that are emotionally engaging. Think about it. You're more likely to remember a funny story than a list of facts. So, by tapping into our imagination, these types of videos can make learning feel less like a chore and more like an adventure.
So instead of drilling yourself with flashcards, you're picturing yourself with wings dodging skyscrapers. That's a much more exciting mental image.
Exactly. And speaking of exciting, the video doesn't just stop at sentences. It actually creates a whole dialogue between two friends experiencing flight for the first time.
Ooh, a dialogue.
Yeah.
That sounds like my cue.
Uh-huh.
Want to try acting it out?
I'm game.
All right, you're my best friend, and we've just taken off for our first flight ever.
Whoa, this is incredible. We're actually flying.
I know, right? It's like being a bird. Look at the city down there. Everything looks so small.
I told you ditching the car was a good idea. Imagine doing this every morning instead of sitting in traffic.
Yeah, but what if we get tired? Where do we land? Good point. We'll just find a nice fluffy cloud to take a nap on.
That's the spirit. Always have a backup plan, even when you're flying.
Okay, maybe not the best plan.
But this dialogue really does highlight how human flight would bring up some pretty tricky questions. I mean, landing on a cloud, not exactly FAA approved.
Right. And think about it. If everyone could suddenly fly, wouldn't we need entirely new rules? Like air traffic control would need a serious upgrade.
Not to mention, where would we all park our wings? Would we need special flight lanes to avoid collisions? This scenario opens up a whole can of logistical worms.
It does, and the video actually touches on some of these issues later on. But for now, let's get back to the language learning aspect.
Right, because this whole scenario is just the backdrop for teaching English, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what comes next?
Well, after the dialogue, the video dives into some key vocabulary words related to flight.
Like what? Give me some examples. Well, they talk about words like soar, hover, and wings, of course. They give definitions and then show how to use these words in sentences. For example, the bird soared high above the clouds. Or, if I had wings, I could fly to school. Simple, but effective.
Those words are so evocative, especially soar. It makes me think of effortless gliding, like an eagle.
And that's exactly what the video is going for, to make those words come alive through this fantastical scenario.
But how does it connect to grammar?
Well,
I remember you mentioning something called the second conditional.
Yes, that's the grammatical structure the video focuses on. And it's perfect for a scenario like this because the second conditional is all about talking about hypothetical situations, things that aren't actually real, like if I could fly, I would. You see what I mean?
So the video is not only teaching you words, but also showing you how to use them in grammatically correct sentences. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But for someone who might not be familiar with all this grammar jargon, what exactly is the second conditional?
Okay.
How does it work?
It's actually simpler than it sounds. Think of it as a way to explore those what-if scenarios, like our human flight fantasy. The basic formula is, if something unreal were true, then something else would happen.
Okay, I think I get it. So like if I had wings, then I wouldn't need to buy a plane ticket. Is that right?
Exactly. You've got the hang of it. And the video It uses lots of fun examples like that to demonstrate how the second conditional works.
I'm starting to see how this whole learning English through imagination thing could actually work.
Right.
You're not just memorizing grammar rules, you're using them to build these cool hypothetical worlds.
And that's one of the key insights from research on language acquisition. When you're actively using the language, experimenting with it, even making mistakes, you're actually strengthening your grasp of the grammar.
So it's like learning to fly by actually jumping off a cliff and figuring out how to use those wings on the way down.
Yeah.
A bit risky, maybe, but definitely more exciting than sitting in a classroom.
Well, maybe not that extreme. But the idea is that active engagement beats passive learning. And that's where this video gets even more clever. It doesn't just explain the second conditional, it actually challenges viewers to use it.
You're telling me there's homework in this fantasy flight school. What kind of challenge is it?
It's actually pretty fun. The video prompts viewers to write their own short story about their first day of flying.
Now that sounds like my kind of assignment. I'm already picturing myself soaring through the clouds, writing my story on a little notepad strapped to my leg.
And the instructions encourage them to use at least 3 of those new vocabulary words we discussed, and of course, to use the second conditional to describe their imaginary experiences.
So it's like they're giving you all the tools you need to build your own flying adventure. You've got your words, your grammar structure, and now it's up to you to create something amazing.
Exactly. And the video even provides an example story to get the creative juices flowing. It's something like, if I could fly, I would soar above the city and visit the tallest buildings. I'd hover over the park and enjoy the view of the clouds.
That's a pretty good start. But I'm already thinking bigger. What if I flew to Paris for breakfast and then zoomed over to the Great Wall of China for lunch?
Those are some ambitious first-day flights, but that's the beauty of it. There are no limits to where your imagination can take you. And by putting those ideas into words, into sentences, you're solidifying your understanding of the language.
You know, it's funny, I came into this thinking, oh, a video about flying, that sounds whimsical. But now I'm seeing how powerful it can be as a learning tool. It's like taking something we all dream about and using it to unlock a whole new level of understanding.
And that brings us back to the bigger picture. This deep dive wasn't just about language learning. It was about exploring a what-if scenario, a fundamental human desire. So let's shift gears for a bit and talk about what human flight would really mean for the world, not just for grammar lessons.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Right. Where do we start? Well, we've already touched on some of the logistical headaches like air traffic control parking.
Right. But let's go deeper. Imagine the impact on our cities. Would we even need roads anymore? Or cars? Maybe we'd have these vertical cities with buildings designed for takeoff and landing.
Whoa, like skyscrapers with balconies for personal aircraft? That's a wild image. But wouldn't that completely change the way we live?
Oh, yeah.
Think about commutes. They'd be so short.
Exactly.
And the views would be incredible.
Exactly. Property values would go haywire. Suddenly, a penthouse apartment isn't just about the view, it's about the easy access to the sky.
Wow.
And what about travel? Forget airports and long flights. You could just soar across the country for a weekend getaway.
Yeah. Talk about freedom.
Yeah.
But here's where I get a little nervous. What about the environmental impact of all this flying? We're already struggling with air pollution as it is.
That's a critical point. If we weren't careful, human flight could be an ecological disaster. We'd need some serious technological advancements to make it sustainable. Imagine biofueled wings or personal aircraft powered by solar energy.
That would be amazing.
Huh.
But even then, think about the noise pollution. Millions of people buzzing around in the sky. Wouldn't that be incredibly disruptive?
Yeah.
Especially for wildlife. Birds, in particular, might be in trouble.
You're raising some tough but important ethical questions. If we achieved human flight, we'd have a huge responsibility to mitigate its impact on the environment. It wouldn't be just about personal freedom, it would be about finding a way to coexist with nature in this new reality.
This is making me think about that final question you posed earlier. If humans could fly, would we still appreciate the beauty of birds in flight? It's like, would their effortless grace seem less special if we were all clumsily flapping around up there too?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe it would make us take birds for granted, or maybe seeing them navigate the skies with such elegance would make us even more awestruck. Perhaps it would inspire us to refine our own flying techniques to learn from nature's mastery.
It's fascinating to consider, isn't it?
Yeah.
This whole thought experiment has taken us from basic English grammar to city planning, environmental ethics, and the meaning of beauty. Who knew a language learning video could spark such a deep dive?
And that's the power of approaching learning with an open mind and a sense of curiosity. You never know where a single question like, what if humans could fly, might lead you. It's a reminder that even the most fantastical ideas can offer valuable insights into the real world and our place within it.
So to our listeners out there, we leave you with this. What are your thoughts on this question of human flight and our appreciation for birds? What a perspective change? Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear them.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep letting your imagination soar.
That's a wrap for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of knowledge, insights, and maybe even a few more flights of fancy. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at something pretty different. We're kind of at the crossroads of time travel and learning English as a second language. And we've got this outline for a YouTube video that takes a very unique approach. I think you're going to be interested to hear about this.
Well, yeah, it seems like it's an attempt to tap into that what if feeling that we all love. The outline we have here is for a video called What If Time Travel Was Possible? Learn English with Fun. And I mean, the title itself really kind of gets to the core of it. It's using this fantastical scenario to try and get people excited about learning the language.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical English lesson. You know, instead of just drilling people on grammar and vocabulary, this video wants you to actually imagine hopping into a time machine.
Yeah.
You know, it's even got activities like writing dialogues with people from the future, or even creating these short stories about your time traveling adventures.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating approach, I think. I mean, think about the last time you were really engrossed in something that you were learning. I bet it was something that was really fun and engaging.
Right. And that's what this video is trying to do for English language learners. By presenting the grammar and vocabulary in the context of this thrilling time travel narrative, they're really trying to make the process enjoyable. And then, you know, because it's enjoyable, it's going to be more effective too.
So how does this actually play out in the video? Can you maybe walk us through the structure a little bit?
Sure. So it starts with an intro, of course.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, setting the scene and kind of getting the learner's imagination going about the possibilities of time travel. But then it cleverly layers in all these different learning activities, like there's dialogue practice and there's vocabulary, grammar lessons that are all woven into this time travel story. Mm-hmm. And then they've got interactive questions that really get you thinking. And then to top it all off, there's this creative writing challenge at the end. It sounds like they're really trying to hit every part of language acquisition, right? Like reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But they're keeping it fun. That's really impressive.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like sneaking in the veggies, you know, with a delicious dessert.
Right. They're appealing to that innate human desire that we have.
Yeah.
To explore the unknown, but doing it in a way that actually helps you learn a new language at the same time.
So let's get into the specifics of the actual content itself. What kind of vocabulary and grammar are they teaching? Like, how is it all fitting into this time travel theme?
Well, all the vocabulary is centered around time travel concepts. So words like, you know, time machine and explore, era, you know, things like that. But the interesting thing is that they don't just give you these words like in a list. They weave them into the activities so you learn them in context. Like, for example, they might have a dialogue between a time traveler and someone living in the future. And then in that dialogue, they use words like future and technology and things like that. So you're not just memorizing a list of words, but you're actually seeing how they're used, right? Like in a real conversation, or at least, you know, an imagined conversation.
Oh,
that's cool. What about grammar? Are they focusing on any particular structures?
Yes. They're introducing the second conditional, which is really perfect for talking about these hypothetical situations. You know, like if I could time travel, I would visit ancient Rome, you know, things like that. And this grammar structure really fits so naturally within the whole time travel theme. And it allows learners to actually practice expressing their own hypothetical journeys and desires and things like that.
Yeah. So it gives them a reason to use the grammar.
Exactly.
They're not just, you know, conjugating verbs. They're imagining themselves in these crazy scenarios. And they can use the language to actually talk about it.
Yeah, precisely. It taps into the power of imagination as a learning tool. You know, when you get emotionally invested in the scenario, the learning becomes much more meaningful and memorable, even if it's fantastical.
And I love how they're encouraging active learning. So they're not just passively watching a video, right? They're answering questions, they're writing dialogues and creating stories. Tell me more about these interactive elements.
Sure. So throughout the video, they'll sprinkle in questions like, if you could time travel, where would you go? You know, past or future, and why, and who is one historical figure you would love to meet, questions like that. And these questions really get the viewer thinking critically and applying the vocabulary and grammar that they've just learned. And then it doesn't even stop there. They actually have like a creative writing challenge at the end, where they ask viewers to write a short story about their first time travel trip or something, and using the vocabulary and grammar that they learned. And they can even share those stories online with other learners. And, sharing those stories, it can really help boost confidence and then give them a sense of accomplishment.
So it's building a community.
Yeah.
Which can be so important, especially when you're learning a new language. Especially if you're learning on your own. It's like they're building a little virtual time travel club.
Right.
Where everybody can share their adventures and support each other.
That's a great way to put it. And, this whole community building idea, it's actually backed up by research in education psychology. Like, when learners feel connected to a group, they're going to be more motivated. They're going to be more engaged. And ultimately, they're going to be more successful.
Makes sense. It doesn't have to be like this, solitary thing. It can be like a shared experience.
Yeah.
And this video really seems to emphasize that.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most innovative aspects of this approach. They're not just teaching a language. They're creating this whole environment where learners can, connect and collaborate and inspire each other. I mean,
it's like they're turning language learning into a game.
Yeah.
Right, with all these challenges and then sharing your creations.
Yeah, you're right. That actually brings up another interesting element here, which is this concept of gamification, using game-like elements in learning has become really popular, and for good reason. I mean, when something feels like a game, we're more likely to stick with it.
Right.
We push ourselves further, and we actually enjoy it.
Think about it. I mean, we've all spent hours playing video games.
Right.
Totally engrossed in the challenge and the reward and everything. So, I mean, why not try and bring that to language learning?
Exactly. Our brains are wired to respond to that kind of stuff. Rewards and challenges and sense of progress and all that. That's what this video is trying to do by, incorporating these interactive elements.
So it's not just time travel. It's kind of about using that to make it into a game.
Exactly. And there is, science behind it. Studies have actually shown that bringing in these game-like elements into learning can lead to people being more motivated. They have improved memory. They can even have a deeper understanding of the material.
That's incredible. Like, we're finally figuring out how to make learning actually enjoyable and effective instead of it being a chore.
Yeah, I agree completely. And this YouTube video outline, even though it's just like a blueprint, I think it really offers a glimpse into the future of education, like a future where learning is really personalized and engaging and driven by, imagination and play.
It's really inspiring to see how creative educators are getting with this stuff,
Absolutely. And I think this particular example with the time travel theme and the community building, it's really intriguing because it shows that we can kind of break free from the traditional classroom and create learning experiences that are really captivating and memorable.
What do you think is the most innovative aspect of this whole video concept?
For me, I think it's how they've woven together these seemingly totally different elements like time travel and gamification and community building. They've created this holistic learning experience that appeals to both our intellectual curiosity and then, our emotional need for connection.
I totally agree. It's not just about learning the language itself. It's about going on an adventure.
Yeah.
Connecting with fellow travelers. Yeah. Feeling a sense of belonging.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that learning doesn't have to be about memorizing facts and figures. It can be this journey of discovery, a source of joy, and a way to connect with others who share your passions.
And sometimes it even involves time travel.
Right.
But speaking of time travel, I'm curious how they handle the specifics of actually teaching the grammar and vocabulary within this whole fantastical scenario.
That's a great question. Yeah, let's look at some of the specific examples that they provide in the outline and see how they bring these concepts to life.
Sounds good to me. Let's fire up our metaphorical time machines and see where this journey takes us. It's funny, we always think about time travel as this fictional thing, but in a way, learning a new language, is time travel.
That's interesting. How so?
Well, when you learn a new language, you're kind of opening a window into a different culture, a different way of thinking, a different worldview even. It's like you're stepping into a time machine and experiencing the world through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah.
like another community or even another historical period.
Oh, I really like that. That's a great analogy. It's true. Language is more than just words and grammar. It reflects a whole culture's history and values, their beliefs. So when you learn a new language, you're basically getting access to this whole new world of human experience.
Exactly. And this YouTube video with this time travel theme, I think it's really tapping into that in a clever way.
Yeah.
It's encouraging learners to really immerse themselves in the culture, not just learn, the language itself, but imagine interacting with people from different times and places.
Yeah. It's like they're taking this concept of cultural immersion and giving it this like literal time-bending twist.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they're making the process so much more engaging and meaningful and just more effective overall.
It really makes you think about using these imaginative scenarios in other parts of education too. Like, what if we could learn history by like literally stepping back in time and experiencing these big historical events firsthand? Or what if we could learn science by, exploring the universe as an astronaut?
Those are great ideas. And I think they really point to this trend that we're seeing more and more, towards experiential learning, where students aren't just kind of sitting back and listening, but they're actually engaging and making connections and creating their own understanding.
Yeah, it's about moving away from just memorizing things and moving towards something that's more holistic and immersive, that really sparks your curiosity and your imagination. And I think this video really hits the nail on the head there.
I completely agree. I think the big takeaway for me is that learning should be an adventure. It should be fun and it should be engaging and it should spark a sense of wonder. And sometimes, a little time travel can help us get there.
Well said. So to our listener, we really want you to think about how you can bring this sense of adventure and imagination into your own journey of learning.
Yeah. Whether you're learning a new language or exploring a new subject or just trying to broaden your horizons a little bit, just remember that the most effective learning experiences are the ones that tap into your curiosity and your creativity and your sense of play.
And who knows, maybe someday we will actually have time machines and we can travel to the past and the future. But until then, I think we can all use our imaginations to explore all the possibilities of human knowledge and experience.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new ideas and inspired you to maybe approach learning with a fresh sense of wonder and possibility.
All right, so today let's dive into something kind of fun. Ever thought about like what it would be like if animals had jobs? Like, can you imagine like a dog?
Yeah.
Like with a tiny police uniform chasing squirrels, or like an elephant, like carefully like swinging a wrecking ball.
I mean,
It's pretty funny, right? Well, it turns out that this whole like silly idea, it's actually the whole basis of an English language learning video.
yeah. And what's really interesting is this video, What If Animals Had Jobs?
Yeah.
It uses this really fun scenario to not just entertain, but to teach vocabulary and grammar.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical English lesson.
Right.
But the video, it connects these like animal job combinations to this concept of the second conditional in English grammar.
Right. And even if you're not learning English, this grammatical structure, it's relevant to everyone.
Yeah.
Because it's all about hypothetical situations, thinking in if-then terms. That's a fundamental part of how we learn, how we solve problems, even just daydreaming about possibilities.
So like instead of saying a cat makes delicious food, the video uses the second conditional to see something like if a cat were a chef, their food would be amazing.
Ooh.
It's subtle, but it totally changes the meaning, right?
Exactly. And it really highlights how this kind of thinking encourages us to consider all these possibilities and consequences. It's like this core part of critical thinking, and it's something that we're constantly using in our lives, even if we don't really realize it.
So the video presents these like hypothetical situations, like you said, a dog police officer or an elephant construction worker. And then it uses those examples to teach the grammar, to express those what-if situations. I mean, it's a pretty clever way to make learning engaging, right?
Oh, absolutely. Our brains are wired to remember information better when it's presented in a way that's unexpected and emotional and, fun. Like, think about it. You're way more likely to remember a joke than a boring lecture.
Oh, for sure. I can still remember some of the crazy mnemonics I used back in school, even all these years later. So how do you think this approach, like using humor and these animal job scenarios, how does that tap into those same learning mechanisms?
Well, for one thing, it creates a really strong visual. Can you just picture this dog in a uniform struggling to write a speeding ticket with his paws. Add that image. It's going to stick with you, along with the grammar lesson that's attached to it.
Right. It's like this mental cartoon just playing in your head.
Yeah.
And the video. It's not just throwing out random animal job combinations. There's some real thought behind each pairing. Like using stereotypes we already have about certain animals.
And that's what makes it really interesting. It makes us confront those stereotypes and consider if they'd even make sense in a different context. For example, we often think of cats as like independent and even like aloof. Would that really translate well to a demanding job, like a chef who needs to manage a team and cater to all these customers' needs?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny to imagine a cat chef, like meticulously plating a gourmet dish.
Yeah.
But would they really have the patience for a busy kitchen? Or would they just be like hiding in the pantry, judging everyone's taste?
Right, that's the humor of it. And it opens up this space for discussion and critical thinking. We're not just like passively absorbing information. We're actively engaging with it, questioning these assumptions, and even laughing along the way.
So this approach, it's not just about teaching English. It's about encouraging a more like playful and inquisitive mindset. And honestly, that's something we could all benefit from, no matter what we're learning.
Exactly. It reminds us that learning doesn't have to be a chore. It can be an adventure full of surprises, humor, and even a few aha moments.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about the video's overall approach, but let's dive into some specific examples of these animal job combinations and see what insights we can uncover. Are you ready to play detective and analyze these pairings?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great.
What's first on the list? Well, the video starts with the classic. The dog police officer. Like, it's almost impossible not to picture a German Shepherd in this like tiny uniform, right?
Oh yeah, totally. It's such a common trope.
Yeah.
But why do you think that pairing feels so natural to us?
Well, I think it's because it plays on these really deep stereotypes we have about dogs, like loyalty, obedience, that strong sense of smell, all qualities that we associate with good police work.
Right.
But it also like raises this question, are we maybe limiting our understanding of both dogs' A&D police work by just relying on these simple notions?
Yeah, it's true. Not all dogs are cut out to be police officers, just like not all police work requires those specific traits. And the video, it's not afraid to poke fun at those stereotypes either. Can you imagine that same German Shepherd trying to write a parking ticket with those huge paws?
Exactly. It's that mix of the familiar and the absurd that makes it so memorable. And by exaggerating those stereotypes, it actually makes us question if they're even true.
Okay, so let's move on to another example. The elephant construction worker. Now that one seems pretty straightforward. I mean, strength and size are key in construction, right?
Yeah, on the surface, for sure. Elephants are known for their power and their ability to move like really heavy objects. But the video, it highlights another part of their skill set, dexterity. Like, we've all seen those videos of elephants picking up tiny objects with their trunks.
Right. It's amazing how such powerful creatures can also be so precise. So you could have an elephant operating a crane 1 minute and then carefully placing a delicate mosaic tile the next.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, do we underestimate the potential of elephants and maybe even other animals because we only focus on those more obvious traits?
That's a great point. It's like we're putting them in boxes based on our limited understanding of their capabilities. And, you know, come to think of it, don't we do that with people too?
Oh, absolutely. We make assumptions based on appearances, job titles, or even just a person's species. I mean, this video, it's lighthearted, but it kind of makes us consider those assumptions and how they might limit our perception of the world around us.
So it's not just about learning English. It's about expanding our thinking and challenging our own biases. Okay, so let's try a different approach. Instead of analyzing the examples from the video, what if we came up with our own animal job combinations?
Ooh, I love that idea. It's like a chance to put those creative thinking skills to the test.
What do you have in mind? Well, thinking back to the cat chef, what if we took another animal that's known for being meticulous and maybe a little particular? How about a raccoon accountant? I can just picture them meticulously organizing receipts and balancing those books.
And raccoons have those little nimble fingers, perfect for handling money and using a calculator. Plus, they're known for being resourceful and clever, which are valuable traits in the world of finance.
Exactly. Okay, your turn. Think of an animal that's known for its patience and calm demeanor. What kind of job do you think they would excel at?
How about a sloth therapist? They're known for being slow and deliberate, which could actually be very calming for patients. They'd be excellent listeners, never rushing anyone. And their slow, steady voice would be super soothing.
That's brilliant. Imagine a sloth leading a meditation session or offering words of encouragement. With that like Zen-like tranquility, they'd be the ultimate stress busters. Okay, this is fun. I've got another one. A chameleon spy. They could blend into any environment, gather intel, and disappear without a trace.
Oh, wow. Now that's thinking outside the box. Blending into their surroundings, gathering intel. It's perfect. This is exactly what this kind of creative exercise encourages. Looking beyond the obvious and considering the hidden potential in unexpected places.
Man, it's not just about animals. This playful approach to learning, it can be applied to any subject. Like imagine trying to learn history by creating a board game about famous battles, or understanding physics by building a miniature roller coaster.
Exactly. By tapping into our sense of play and imagination, we can make learning more engaging and memorable. And who knows, maybe we'll even discover hidden talents and passions along the way.
So, we've analyzed the pairings from the video and even brainstormed our own. But let's take this thought experiment one step further. What would a world where animals actually DID have jobs look like?
Ooh, now we're getting into some speculative fiction territory, but I think it's a fascinating thought experiment.
Right, like would animals have unions? Would they demand fair wages? Would a dog police officer get a bone instead of a paycheck? Would there be an office pet peeve about a coworker always burying their snacks in the potted plant?
Huh. These are all great questions, and it's funny to think about those practical implications of a multi-species workforce. But it also makes us consider some deeper ethical questions, like how would we ensure fair treatment and prevent exploitation? What rights would animals have in the workplace?
Yeah, it raises a lot of intriguing possibilities, but also potential challenges. And maybe it even makes us question the very nature of work itself. Like, is it something inherently human? Or is it something we could share and potentially even learn from in collaboration with other species?
That's a thought-provoking question. We often just assume this human-centric view of the world. But this exercise challenges that perspective. Maybe there are valuable insights and even solutions to problems that we could gain by working alongside animals.
It's definitely a concept worth pondering. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From dog police officers to sloth therapists to imagining a future where animals are our colleagues. But there's one final layer to this deep dive that I think is really important.
And what's that?
I think we've been focusing a lot on the content of the video, like all these funny animal job pairings and all the questions they bring up. But what I find most interesting is the bigger picture, the principle that makes this approach so effective.
You mean like using humor and imagination as tools for learning?
Exactly. Like the video, it could have just presented the second conditional in this really dry textbook way. But by using these unexpected scenarios and some humor, it becomes something you remember, something that sticks with you.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's the difference between reading facts and experiencing a story. Our brains, they connect with narratives and characters and emotions. And when those are present, learning just becomes so much easier.
Yeah. It's like hiding vegetables in a delicious sauce. You still get all the nutrients, but it's way more enjoyable.
I like that. That's a great analogy. It shows how this approach can make learning less intimidating, especially for those subjects that seem really hard or complex when we're laughing and using our imaginations. It just breaks down those mental barriers.
Right. It's like we're letting our brains play and explore and make mistakes without being afraid to be judged. And in that space, we're just so much more open to new information.
For sure. Think about when you were really into a game or a creative project. You probably lost track of time. You were so engaged.
Right.
And you were learning without even knowing it. That's the power of play.
Yeah, that feeling of flow.
Yeah.
Where you're just so focused that everything else disappears. And I think that's what this video does so well. It reminds us that learning, it doesn't have to be boring. It can be joyful and surprising and even hilarious.
Right. And when we start learning with that playfulness and curiosity, it opens up all these new possibilities and connections and new ways of seeing the world.
As we finish up this deep dive into animals with jobs, we want to leave you with this. Don't underestimate the power of play if you're trying to learn something new or master a skill or just understand this crazy world we live in. Don't be afraid to embrace those moments of laughter and imagination and just silliness.
Yeah, because in those moments, you might discover a totally new way of seeing things and maybe even learn a little bit more about yourself too.
All right, get ready for a deep dive into a scenario that's both, well, kind of terrifying and fascinating at the same time. What would happen if, poof, the moon just suddenly vanished?
Yeah, like a magic trick.
Gone, just like that. It sounds like a sci-fi movie plot, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But We're going to break this down using a surprising source, actually. It all comes from an outline, believe it or not, for an English lesson.
An English lesson?
Yeah, it was designed around this whole what if the moon disappeared scenario.
Interesting.
But we're going to go way beyond grammar here. We're going to explore the actual scientific ripple effects.
Okay, real world stuff.
Real world stuff.
Yeah.
And the cultural impact, too, of a moonless Earth. What would it be like?
It makes you realize just how much we just, completely take the moon for granted.
Absolutely.
It's up there. We see it.
Yeah, it's just there.
But it's not just a pretty face up in the night sky. It's really deeply connected, intertwined with our planet, with our history in a lot of ways.
Yeah, totally. Our source material mentions a pretty obvious starting point. No moon equals no moonlight, right?
Right.
I know the moon reflects sunlight. We all learned that back in, grade school. But how much brighter does that reflected light actually make our nights? Like, is it enough to really make a difference?
It's actually a much bigger difference than you might think. The moon, we think of the sun obviously being the brightest thing, but the moon is the second brightest object in our night sky.
Oh, wow.
So without it, those nights would be dramatically darker. Just think about it. Before, we had all this artificial light everywhere, that full moon, it was a super significant light source for people.
That's true. So I guess no more romantic moonlit walks then, huh? I'm sensing a lot of disappointed poets and werewolves out there.
More than just disappointed, I think. Some cultures really developed entire belief systems based around the full moon because of how bright it was. Yeah, it was seen as, this source of power, of mystery, a little bit of fear even. Think about how many ancient myths and rituals are tied to the lunar cycle.
That's true. Yeah.
A world without that very prominent lunar presence, it almost certainly would have shaped very different cultural and religious practices throughout human history.
Wow. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
It's easy to overlook how something, seemingly simple like moonlight could have such a huge cultural impact.
It really could, yeah.
But let's move on to something a bit more, concrete. Tides.
Okay.
Our source material mentions that tides would be weaker without the moon's gravitational pull. But to what extent, I guess, is the question? Would they disappear completely?
Not completely, no. The sun also has a gravitational influence, on the ocean.
Right.
But it's much, much weaker than the moon's. So we'd still have tides. They just would be significantly smaller, reduced, maybe even by as much as 2/3.
Okay, so I guess no more surfing those, monster waves up in the Bay of Fundy then.
Probably not.
But are there any, real-world consequences to this? Beyond bummer surf conditions, are we talking about serious problems?
The impact on coastal ecosystems would be, pretty substantial. That ebb and flow of tides, that drives nutrient circulation. It shapes the coastlines. It even influences the breeding cycles of a lot of different marine species.
Oh,
so, yeah, reduced tides, that could disrupt a lot of these finely tuned natural processes.
Yeah.
And that would impact potentially everything from fisheries to coastal erosion, the whole 9 yards.
So we're talking potential ecological domino effects, not just a change in, the view.
Right.
Speaking of living things, our source also mentions that animals would have to, adapt to a moonless world. Are there any creatures out there that are, really reliant on the moon, to an extreme degree?
Oh, tons of examples, yeah. Think about nocturnal predators, owls, for example. They rely on moonlight to hunt.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Or sea turtles. They use the moon to navigate during migrations when they're nesting.
Wow.
And even, down to certain coral species, they use the lunar cycle to time their spawning events.
That's wild.
A sudden disappearance, poof, the moon's gone. That would really throw a wrench into those, finely tuned evolutionary adaptations.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if those adaptations, developed in the first place because of the moon, right?
Right.
Could the moon have actually driven evolution in very specific directions over millions of years?
That's a question that, really gets to the core of evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
But it's definitely plausible. Imagine, a nocturnal predator. The ones that had, slightly better night vision in a moonlit world, they would have a huge advantage, right?
Of course, yeah.
They'd be able to hunt better, survive better, and pass those genes on to their offspring. And so over, countless generations, that could absolutely lead to those very specialized adaptations that are just perfectly in tune with the moon being there.
Wow. It's just amazing how one single celestial body can have like this massive cascading effect on everything, from animal behavior to the ocean currents to, I mean, who knows what else. But this deep dive is supposed to be about more than just those immediate, I guess, surface level effects, right?
Right, yeah.
Our source material, it uses this whole vanishing moon thing as a way to teach hypothetical situations in English grammar, specifically the second conditional.
Okay.
So thinking long term here, what other major changes might we actually see on a moonless Earth?
Well, one of the most dramatic would be the Earth's axial tilt. That tilt that gives us our seasons.
Oh, right.
Well, the moon's gravity actually helps stabilize the planet's wobble.
Okay.
But without the moon, that axial tilt could become much more erratic, and that would lead to some pretty wild swings in the seasons.
So hold on, are you saying no more predictable seasons? Like summer vacations would be a total gamble?
Well, not necessarily no more seasons, but imagine summers becoming crazy hot and winters freezing cold. The weather patterns in between, they'd be much more unpredictable. It would make agriculture and just basic survival so much more challenging for humans and, and a lot of other species too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a moonless Earth, I'm getting the picture here, might be a much more chaotic place just in terms of the climate.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else you should be worried about?
Oh, yeah. The length of a day would actually be totally different. The moon's gravity is slowly, but it's putting the brakes on Earth's rotation.
Okay.
Making our days, very gradually longer over time. But without that lunar drag, our days would probably stay fixed at around 6 to 8 hours long.
Wait, so we'd be cramming everything we do now into like a 6-hour day?
Pretty much, yeah.
No thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
is there any chance, realistically, that the moon could just disappear like that?
Thankfully, it's extremely, extremely improbable. I mean, the moon's been orbiting Earth for billions of years.
Yeah.
And there's no known, celestial event that could realistically cause it to just vanish overnight.
Okay.
But, thinking through these what ifs, these hypotheticals, it helps us to understand just how profoundly connected our planet really is to its cosmic companion.
Yeah, it definitely makes you appreciate that, big silvery disk up in the sky a bit more, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned something earlier about meteor impacts. Is that a serious concern in a world without a moon?
Yeah, it's definitely worth considering. The moon acts like, a gravitational shield. It kind of draws in a lot of those meteors and asteroids that might otherwise be headed straight for Earth.
Right.
So without that lunar bodyguard, our planet could be a much more vulnerable target for those kinds of things.
See, I'm starting to feel like maybe we should be grateful for the moon, even if it does, mess with our tides and inspires all those werewolf legends.
Right.
But, this whole conversation has got me thinking about something else.
What's that?
The cultural impact. Imagine all the art, the music, literature, even scientific discoveries that have been totally inspired by the moon over the centuries.
Right.
I mean, would those things even exist without the moon as a kind of, a muse? Would we even understand the universe the same way?
That's a really interesting point, actually. The moon has been, this constant source of wonder and inspiration for humanity since the dawn of civilization, really.
Yeah.
I mean, its presence has shaped our mythology, our art, even our scientific understanding of the whole cosmos.
It really has.
So yeah, a world without the moon, it would undoubtedly be a completely different place, not just physically, but culturally, for sure.
This English lessons turned out to be a lot more complex than I thought,
A bit more than grammar, yeah.
Bit more than grammar, yeah, it really is. From darker nights and shorter days to a planet potentially spinning out of control, it seems like a missing moon would really shake things up.
It really would.
But I think we need to, go a little deeper on some of these consequences. What do you say we pick up this deep dive in part 2?
Sounds good to me. Welcome back. We've been exploring what life on Earth would be like without the moon, and it's already pretty clear that its absence would be felt far beyond just, dimmer nighttime skies.
Right. It's not just about missing those, romantic moonlit strolls. We're talking about potential ecological disaster, chaotic seasons, and maybe even, like you said, more meteor showers.
Right.
But I'm curious to, I guess, unpack some of those consequences a bit further, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's delve a bit deeper into this idea of the moon as kind of a protector.
Okay.
We touched upon that earlier, talking about its role in deflecting asteroids.
Right.
But its gravitational influence actually goes much deeper than that, affecting even Earth's interior.
You mean it's not just pulling on the oceans?
Right. Exactly.
What kind of impact does it have, like beneath the surface?
Well, it's pretty fascinating, actually. The moon's gravity, it exerts a pull on Earth's molten core, and that generates heat through something called tidal friction.
Okay.
You can almost think of it like this constant, gentle tugging, that keeps things stirred up deep inside our planet.
So the moon is kind of like Earth's internal heating system.
In a way, yeah.
I never thought of it that way. But how crucial is that internal heat, really?
It's more significant than you might think. That internal heat, it's actually what drives plate tectonics.
Oh, right.
The movement of those, massive continental plates. And plate tectonics is responsible for everything from volcanic activity to the formation of mountains and even continents over millions of years.
Oh, so without the moon, we might not just have like weaker tides and weird seasons, but also a less dynamic planet, geologically speaking. Like less volcanic activity, maybe even fewer mountains.
It's possibly.
That's a pretty dramatic shift from the landscape to we're, used to seeing.
It really does highlight the interconnectedness of all of Earth's systems.
Yeah.
How everything from the core to the atmosphere is influenced by this delicate balance,
Yeah.
And the moon's presence, it shaped Earth's evolution for billions of years. So its sudden disappearance would, without a doubt, have a pretty profound impact on all of those systems.
All this talk about these physical changes, it makes me wonder about the impact on us, on humans.
Yeah.
Like, how would we, I guess, psychologically react to such a drastic change in our world?
That's an incredibly important question, and one that often gets overlooked when we talk about these kinds of, hypothetical scenarios. I mean, think about it. The moon has been this constant presence in the night sky for all of human history.
Right.
A source of wonder, of fear, inspiration for, countless cultures. So its sudden disappearance, it would likely trigger a whole range of emotions, I think, from awe to maybe even existential dread.
Yeah, I imagine it would really depend on the culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Some societies might see it as like, a sign of the apocalypse.
Right.
Others might see it as like a chance for a new beginning, a fresh start.
Exactly. Think about all the myths and legends surrounding eclipses in different cultures throughout history.
Oh, yeah.
The moon's disappearance would be like a permanent eclipse, like a disruption of the natural order of things. And each culture would interpret that and react to that in its own, very unique way.
It's almost too much to contemplate, really.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second and go back to something you mentioned earlier, the moon's role in, I guess, our understanding of the universe. I'm curious to explore that a bit further, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. I mean, think about it. The moon was humanity's first, real foray into space. It was the first celestial body that we reached, that we walked on, that we studied up close.
Right.
And those early missions, especially the Apollo landings, I mean, they fundamentally changed our understanding of the solar system, planetary geology, even, the origins of the Earth-Moon system itself.
So you're saying that without the moon, our scientific progress, especially in space exploration, would have been significantly hampered.
It's hard to say for certain, of course.
Right.
But it's highly likely, I think. The moon, it served as this kind of stepping stone, a testing ground for all the technologies and the knowledge that you need for more ambitious missions. I mean, imagine trying to develop the rockets, the spacesuits, the scientific instruments needed for a Mars mission, for example, without having first sent humans to the moon.
Like the moon was our cosmic training wheels, helping us, learn to walk before we could run.
Exactly, yeah.
But it wasn't just about, technological advancements.
Right.
The moon also inspired like a lot of scientific curiosity,
Yeah.
A desire to understand its mysteries.
Oh, absolutely. From Galileo's first observations of the lunar craters to the Apollo missions that, actually brought back lunar samples, the moon has driven scientific inquiry for centuries. Just imagine all the countless theories, the hypotheses, the experiments that might never have been pursued if we didn't have the moon as, that kind of muse.
Yeah, it makes you realize that even though it's, just this big rock floating in space, the moon has played this like outsized role in shaping human history, both culturally and scientifically.
For sure.
And to think, all this started from a simple question in an English lesson.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It just goes to show the power of curiosity, right?
Right.
How even a seemingly mundane scenario, can unlock these really profound questions about about our world, our place in the universe.
This deep dive has definitely made me see the moon in a new light, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But as we're wrapping up this part of our conversation, there's one thought that keeps coming back to me. Well, we've been really focusing on all the negative consequences of a missing moon.
Right.
But I'm starting to wonder.
Yeah.
Are there any potential positives? Could there be any unexpected benefits to a moonless world?
That's a fantastic question, actually, and one that challenges us to think beyond just, those obvious downsides.
Right.
I mean, imagine, for example, a night sky that's completely free from the moon's glare.
Oh, yeah.
It would be like a stargazer's paradise.
Yeah.
We might uncover, new constellations, make these groundbreaking astronomical observations, or even, accelerate our search for extraterrestrial life. Who knows?
That's a really interesting thought. Without the moon's influence on the tides, might we see totally unique ecosystems emerge in those, coastal regions?
Yeah.
Could those ecosystems harbor brand new species with incredible adaptations?
It's certainly possible. Evolution is driven by change. And a moonless Earth would represent, one of the most dramatic environmental shifts imaginable. It could trigger, this burst of evolutionary innovation, leading to life forms unlike anything we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Perhaps bioluminescent organisms would just flourish in those perpetually dark oceans, or plants might develop new ways to track time and seasons without the moon's influence.
It really challenges us to think outside the box, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Instead of just fear the darkness, we might discover new forms of beauty, new ways of understanding life, and even new ways of being human in a world without a moon.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even in the face of, loss or disruption, life in its remarkable resilience finds a way to adapt, to evolve, and often to really surprise us. And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson we can take away from this hypothetical journey.
This whole deep dive has really shifted my perspective. I started out, thinking about a moonless Earth as this total disaster.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to see it as a challenge, and an opportunity to reimagine our world and our place in it.
And that, I think, is the power of these kinds of thought experiments, right? They allow us to stretch our imaginations, to confront our assumptions, and ultimately to deepen our understanding of how interconnected our universe really is.
It really is. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. Don't be afraid to ask the what ifs.
Right.
To explore those hypotheticals that challenge the status quo. Curiosity and imagination, those are the engines of discovery.
Absolutely.
And who knows what wonders might be waiting for us in those, those uncharted territories of the mind.
And even though our deep dive into a moonless world is coming to an end here, remember to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and keep looking up at that night sky. Whether it's illuminated by the moon or just ablaze with the brilliance of a million stars.
Yeah.
Because in the vastness of the cosmos, there's always something new to learn, something new to wonder about, and something new to inspire us.
Welcome back to our final segment, exploring, the hypothetical disappearance of the moon. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've gone from, those darker nights to shorter days to the potential for some, pretty serious ecological upheaval.
Yeah, it really is it's a testament to how deeply intertwined the moon really is with the very fabric of our planet and our history, really.
It is, and and it all kind of stems from that simple English lesson outline, remember?
Right, yeah.
Which used this whole scenario to teach hypothetical situations, like what if this happened?
It's pretty amazing how a simple grammar exercise can really spark such profound questions.
Yeah, it is.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound insights come from just, embracing the what ifs, just kind of asking those questions.
Enacting the questions, yeah. And speaking of progress, I guess we spent a good chunk of this deep dive focused on those negative consequences of a moonless Earth. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to that idea that you brought up earlier, the potential positives.
Yeah.
Could there be some unexpected benefits to a world without a moon?
Yeah, it's tempting to just fixate on the losses, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. It's crucial to really consider the potential opportunities that such a dramatic change might actually present. For example, just imagine Imagine a night sky that's completely free from the moon's glare. It would be like, a stargazer's paradise. We might discover new constellations, make these groundbreaking astronomical observations, or even accelerate our search for extraterrestrial life even.
Right. I mean, who knows? It's amazing to think about. Without the moon's influence on the tides, might we see unique ecosystems emerge in those coastal regions that we were talking about?
It's possible, yeah.
Could those ecosystems, harbor new species with like remarkable, crazy adaptations?
It's certainly possible, yeah. I mean, evolution is driven by change, and a moonless Earth would represent, one of the most dramatic environmental shifts imaginable. It really could trigger this burst of evolutionary innovation, leading to life forms unlike anything we've ever seen before. Perhaps bioluminescent organisms would flourish in the perpetually dark oceans, or plants might develop these new ways to track time and the seasons without the moon's influence.
It really challenges us to think outside the box, I think.
It does, yeah.
Instead of just fearing the darkness, we might discover new forms of beauty, new ways of understanding life itself, and even new ways of being human in a world without a moon.
It's a reminder that even in the face of loss or disruption, life in its remarkable resilience, it finds a way. It finds a way to adapt, to evolve, and often to really surprise us. And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson, I think, that we can draw from this hypothetical journey.
It probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive, it has really shifted my perspective. I started out thinking about a moonless Earth as this like total disaster.
Right.
And now I'm kind of starting to see it as a challenge, as an opportunity, I guess, to kind of reimagine our world and our place in it.
Yeah, and that I think is the power of these kinds of thought experiments, right? They allow us to stretch our imaginations, to confront our assumptions, and ultimately to deepen our understanding of how interconnected our universe really is.
Yeah, it really makes you think, just to step back and look at the bigger picture. So to our listeners,
right,
I guess we leave you with this.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask the what ifs.
Right.
To explore the hypothetical, to challenge the status quo. Curiosity and imagination. I mean, those are the engines of discovery, right?
You really are, yeah.
And who knows what wonders might be waiting for us in those uncharted territories of the mind.
That's right. And even though our deep dive into a moonless world is coming to an end here, remember to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and keep looking up at that night sky.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's illuminated by the moon or just ablaze with the brilliance of a million stars.
Yeah.
Because in the vastness of the cosmos, there's always something new to learn, something new to wonder about, and something new to inspire us. So, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Hey, listener. Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that's both kind of fascinating, and a little bit creepy. You ready for this?
Sure.
Robots taking over everyday jobs. I know, right? And get ready for a curveball, because the inspiration for this deep dive, it's actually an English language learning video. Can you believe that?
It sounds unusual, but this video, what if robots took over jobs? It's actually pretty clever.
Yeah.
They use this futuristic scenario, right? And they use it to teach vocabulary and grammar. Sometimes those kind of quirky approaches, well, they can really make you think in a whole new way.
That's totally true. This video really paints this vivid picture. It's a world where robots are doing like everything. Serving us food, teaching our kids, driving us around.
Yeah, and they even have this one scene. It's a robot, right? And he's trying to deliver a package, but he gets stuck on the stairs.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That's like a classic robot struggle, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's actually a clever way to highlight, one of the limitations we have right now with robotics, like we've made huge leaps in AI and automation. But some things, like navigating these unpredictable environments, well, that's still a major hurdle for robots.
It's true.
It's a good reminder that even in this future world they're creating, robots, well, They're not going to be perfect right away.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it, about what it would really be like for robots to just take over our jobs. The video actually does a great job of breaking down some of those key vocabulary words, like robot, automation, AI, task, and efficient. And it even gives these simple sentences, which is perfect for, well, people learning the language.
And even though the definitions are straightforward, they actually kind of open the door to some pretty deep concepts. Like, for example, the video defines AI as machines that can think and learn. But honestly, that definition, it barely scratches the surface. There are all sorts of different types of AI, and each one has like different levels of complexity and capability, right?
Right. So like some AI systems are amazing at specific tasks, like playing chess or even recognizing faces, but they're nowhere near close to, well, actually replicating the kind of general intelligence we humans have.
That's exactly where it gets really interesting.
Because the video actually tackles those big what-if questions.
Yeah.
And they use something called the second conditional. That's a grammar term, by the way. But they use it to explore these hypothetical situations. Like if robots took over jobs, people might have more free time.
I think it's fascinating they use that specific grammar structure. It's not just presenting like facts about robots, it's actually encouraging viewers to actively imagine those possibilities, the good and the bad.
It's true.
It's a really subtle way of getting people to think critically about, this future that's coming at us pretty fast.
It's like sneaking in a philosophy lesson disguised as language learning.
Exactly. And that's what makes this source so interesting to me. It's not just teaching vocabulary, it's making us really think about, the bigger implications of relying on robots more and more.
Yeah. Like what does it mean for our jobs or the economy?
Even our definition of what it means to be human.
It's mind-blowing. The video even asks viewers some pretty direct questions, like, what would you do with all your free time if a robot did your job? Or what jobs would robots just be terrible at? It really gets you thinking, doesn't it, about your own place in this future world.
I love those questions. They sound so simple at first, but they actually force us to confront some really deep assumptions we have about work and leisure and the value we put on different skills.
And speaking of skills, the video ends with this amazing challenge. Write a short story about a day in this robot-filled world.
It's brilliant.
It's a fantastic way to encourage viewers to, use their new language skills and at the same time explore their own imaginations.
It really shows the power of storytelling as a learning tool. When we create those stories, we're not just passively absorbing information, we're actually engaging with the ideas and exploring different perspectives and really making meaning out of these, complex concepts.
Okay, so we've touched on the basics of the video, but honestly, I'm ready to dive a little deeper. The video talks about robots doing all sorts of jobs, but the one that really grabbed my attention was the idea of robots behind the wheel.
Ah, yes, the self-driving car. It's a concept that's been captivating us for decades, and we're getting closer and closer to that reality every year. But it also raises some pretty tough questions.
I know, right? On the one hand, who wouldn't love to sit back and relax while a robot just chauffeurs you around, right? But on the other hand, the thought of a machine, making these life or death decisions on the road, well, it can be a bit unsettling.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd just say.
The technology behind those self-driving cars, it's incredibly complex. It's this sophisticated mix of sensors and algorithms and AI. But even with all of those advancements, there are still some major challenges, especially when it comes to safety and ethics.
It's true.
How does a robot car decide who to protect in an unavoidable accident?
It's like straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
It's happening right now. I'm also curious about, the impact on jobs. What happens to all the truck drivers, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, if robots start taking over those roles?
That's a huge GE question. And it goes way beyond just the transportation industry, too. I mean, as robots get more and more capable, they're going to disrupt, a whole bunch of professions like manufacturing and retail, healthcare, even creative fields.
Wow.
And that brings up all these economic and societal questions that we need to be talking about.
And it's not just the practical stuff either. There's this deeper, philosophical question about the role of work in our lives, If robots take over all the boring tasks, what does that mean for our sense of purpose, our identity?
It's a good question.
Our place in the world.
It's almost like we're standing on the edge of this brand new world, right? Full of possibilities, yeah, but also full of uncertainties.
That's true.
And it makes me think of that final challenge in the video. The one where they ask viewers to write that short story about, a day in this robot-filled world.
I wonder what kind of stories people are coming up with.
I think those stories can be super insightful. They let us explore our hopes and fears about the future, to imagine different scenarios and really wrestle with, the ethical and social implications of having all these advanced robots around.
I'm picturing stories about robot companions, robot chefs, even robot therapists.
Oh, yeah.
Like the possibilities are endless. But I'm also thinking about, the downsides. Like, what if robots get too powerful? What if they develop their own consciousness and decide they don't need us anymore?
Those are those classic sci-fi tropes, right? But they do tap into some of those deep-seated anxieties about technology and our relationship to it. It's important to remember, robots, well, they're tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us as humans, to guide their development and make sure they serve our interests and values.
That actually brings up another really important point.
Yeah.
Ethics. As robots get more sophisticated and, more integrated into our lives, we really need to set some clear ethical guidelines for how we design and use them.
Absolutely.
We need to think about questions like, how do we make sure robots are used safely and responsibly? How do we prevent them from being used for harmful purposes, like, surveillance or warfare? How do we protect human rights and dignity in a world where robots are just everywhere?
These are really big questions, and there aren't easy answers.
It's true.
But it's so important that we start asking them NW before the technology gets so advanced that it's too late to change course.
I completely agree.
We need to have these thoughtful, nuanced conversations about the role of robots in our society. And it's not just scientists and engineers who need to be involved. It's ethicists, policymakers, and really the public as a whole.
This video, as simple as it might seem, it's actually a really great starting point for those conversations. It's making us think about the future, right?
Yeah.
And the possibilities and the choices we have to make.
And it reminds us that the future of robots isn't something that's just happening to us. It's something that we're all creating together.
So listener, as you're listening to this deep dive, I really encourage you to think critically about the role you want robots to play in your life and in the world. What are your hopes? What are your concerns? And how can you use your voice and your actions to help shape a future that benefits all of us?
It's a powerful reminder that even with all of this rapid technological change, we still have the power to shape the course of history.
It's amazing to think about how much power we really have as consumers, as citizens, to kind of influence where technology goes from here,
I agree.
When we talk about robots taking over jobs, it's easy to just focus on the UGE changes.
Yeah.
But what about the smaller stuff? Like the ways robots are already impacting our everyday lives.
Yeah.
The things we don't even really think about.
That's a really good point. We tend to picture robots as these futuristic human-like machines. But honestly, robotics is already a part of so many aspects of our lives, and we often don't even realize it.
Okay, so what? Give me some examples.
Well, think about your smartphone. I mean, it's basically a tiny robot in your pocket, right? It's packed with all these sensors and algorithms that help you, navigate and communicate and access information.
That's true.
And then there are the algorithms that leak. They control our social media feeds. They recommend products to us. They even personalize our news.
Wow, I never thought of my phone as a robot before.
Right.
But you're right. What about those robot vacuum cleaners? Seems like everybody has one these days.
Exactly.
They're making life a little easier.
Those are great examples of how robots are already automating tasks and freeing up our time, right? Even in those really ordinary ways. And as the technology keeps getting better, well, we can expect even more robots, right? Coming into our homes or workplaces.
The video we're talking about, it focuses on this world where robots are doing all these different jobs, from teaching to driving to serving food. I'm kind of curious, what are some of the jobs that experts think are most likely to be automated in the near future?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's something that economists and futurists are debating right now. The jobs that involve repetitive tasks or data processing or predictable physical movements, those are the ones that are most likely to be automated first.
Okay.
So think about factory workers, truck drivers, data entry clerks, even some aspects of healthcare and legal work.
That's a pretty wide range of professions. It makes you wonder, what happens to all those people? The ones whose jobs are replaced by robots.
It's a valid concern. It's something that policymakers really need to be thinking about now. Some experts argue that, Automation will create new jobs, just like all the previous technological revelations have.
Right.
But others are worried that this time it's going to be different. Like the pace and the scale of this revolution, it might be unlike anything we've ever seen before.
I see.
And that could lead to, widespread unemployment and even social unrest.
It sounds like we need to be ready for some pretty big changes in the job market. The video mentions that, we might have all this extra free time if robots take over our jobs, which sounds amazing in theory.
Sure.
But what will we actually do with all that free time?
That's a question that's both exciting and kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some people imagine this future where, we have all this leisure time and we can pursue our passions without having to worry about work.
That sounds pretty ideal.
But others worry about, what if we get bored or apathetic? What if we feel isolated because our jobs don't define us anymore?
That's a good point. It's like we're standing on the edge of this whole new world, right? Full of possibilities, but also uncertainty. It reminds me of that final challenge in the video, the one where viewers have to write a short story about a day in this world full of robots. I wonder what kind of stories people are coming up with.
I think those stories can be so revealing. They let us kind of explore those hopes and fears we have about the future and imagine different scenarios and really grapple with, the ethical and social implications of this technology.
I'm picturing stories about, like, robot companions, robot chefs, robot therapists.
It's fun to imagine.
Like, the possibilities are endless, right? But I'm also thinking about the potential downsides.
Sure.
Like, what if robots become too powerful? What if they, develop their own consciousness and decide they don't need us anymore?
That's a classic sci-fi fear, right?
Yeah.
But it speaks to some very real anxieties we have about technology and our relationship to it.
Yeah.
It's important to remember, robots are tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or bad. It all comes down to us, We're the ones who have to guide their development and make sure they're used in a way that benefits humanity.
That brings up another important point, and that's ethics. As robots become more advanced and more integrated into our lives, we really need to be thinking about those ethical guidelines for their design and use.
Absolutely.
We need to be asking questions like, how can we ensure that robots are used safely and responsibly? How do we prevent them from being used for, harmful purposes like surveillance or warfare?
That's right.
How do we protect human rights and dignity in a world where robots are becoming more and more prevalent?
These are tough questions, and there aren't easy answers.
It's true.
But the important thing is that we're having these conversations now before it's too late to course correct. We need to have this open dialogue about the role of robots in our society. And it can't just be scientists and engineers having this conversation. We need ethicists, policymakers, and everyday people to be involved.
This video, it might seem simple on the surface, but it's a fantastic starting point for these kinds of conversations. It's getting us to think about the future and the possibilities and the choices that we have to make.
And it's reminding us that this future with robots, it's not something that's just happening to us. It's something that we're all creating together.
It really does feel like we're on the verge of something totally new. Yeah. And it makes those questions from the video even more interesting. Like, if you could have a robot do one thing to make your life better, what would it be?
It's funny how such a simple question can really reveal what we value most,
Right.
Would we go for pure convenience, like a robot to do all the chores? Or maybe something more creative, like a robot that could, compose music or paint a masterpiece?
I'm torn. Part of me wants a robot chef, just whipping up these amazing gourmet meals. But then the other part of me wants a robot massage therapist to just work out all the kinks after a long day.
That sounds nice.
But seriously, thinking about that question, it makes me realize just how much of our lives is already influenced by technology.
It's true. And as robots get even more advanced, well, that influence is only going to grow. It's not just about what they can do for us. It's about how they might change, how we work, how we learn, how we play, even how we interact with each other.
The video talks about robots freeing up our time. But I wonder if there's a chance that they could actually make us even busier.
Oh, interesting.
Like, if we're always connected to robots and AI, will we ever really disconnect?
No.
truly relax.
That's a good point. We kind of see that happening already with our smartphones and social media, right? It's this constant stream of information and notifications. It can be really hard to just tune it all out.
It's true.
Now imagine that, but amplified, with robots constantly at our beck and call.
It's almost like we need like a whole new set of etiquette rules for interacting with robots.
I like that.
Like, when is it okay to ask a robot for help? And when should we just do things ourselves?
That's a fascinating idea. And it really highlights how important it is for us to be in control, to have agency in this relationship with robots. We need to be aware of how we're using the technology and make conscious choices about how much we let it shape our lives.
This whole conversation has really got me thinking about how important education is going to be, like critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
In this new world we're talking about, if we're going to be living alongside robots, we need to understand them, how they work, what their limitations are, and how to, interact with them safely and ethically.
I agree completely. We need to prepare future generations to navigate this. Well, it's going to be a complex world, right? And that means teaching them not just about the technology itself, but also about ethics and philosophy. And those critical thinking skills you mentioned.
It's like we need a whole new curriculum for the robot age. Maybe that's where that writing challenge from the video comes in, getting kids to think critically and creatively about robots. Maybe that'll help them be more prepared for whatever's coming.
I like that. Who knows? Maybe some of those kids will grow up to be roboticists and AI experts and ethicists who will shape the future of this technology.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the basics of robots and AI and, what it might mean for society. If this technology keeps evolving at this pace, we've explored the potential benefits, the challenges, the hopes, A&D, the fears that surround this whole idea of, robots becoming more and more a part of our lives.
And I think through all of that, we've gained a better understanding of both the power and the responsibility we have as we shape this new world.
Listener, if you're intrigued by all this, I encourage you to keep exploring this topic. Read some books, watch documentaries, talk to experts, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions.
The future of robots, it's not set in stone. It's something we're all creating together. Through our decisions, our conversations, even our everyday choices.
So as we move forward,
Right.
let's approach this whole thing with a sense of wonder, but also, with a healthy dose of critical thinking, because ultimately the future is ours to imagine and ours to create.